Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror, the podcast. I am your host, Kevin L. Powers. I'm also the festival director and program director for Something Wicked Film Festival and Events. And welcome to our show today. Now, if you've been following us in this new year, the 2025, you'll realize that we've been trying to highlight a lot of the older and classic black and white films, as well as a lot of the more modern films, which we kind of skipped through a lot of last year. This year, we want to make a mandate to touch upon many different decades of horror, as well as many different genres and subgenres in the horror world, in order to give you a better idea of all the other types of horror films out there. So I hope that you've been following us along and will continue to follow us each week as we delve deep into a new horror film. So this week, we've gone really classic. We are going back to the original Carnival of Souls, not the Wes Craven produced remake, which I'm sure many of you have never ever heard of, much less seen, but the original Carnival of Souls. So with me tonight or today talking about this film is the amazing Jim Adams. Thank you so much, Jim, for returning.
Hey! Oh, wait a minute. This is Conversations in Horror. Oh, I thought this was Talkville. I'm sorry. No, okay. Well, we'll sit in since we're here. Let's talk about one of my favorite movies from 1962.
62. All right, because the thing is, we don't always touch upon a lot of the classic films.
Yeah.
But we want to change that for this year. So I'm so glad that we're actually talking about this film. Some of the other classic films we've talked about this year have been some of the Universal monster movies, such as Dracula and Bride of Frankenstein. But this is by far one of my favorite independently produced horror films. I'm really happy to talk to you about it, because what do you do but talk about classic monster movies?
That's right. Oh, no, yeah. I think we talked about this one, and this is one that we will definitely go back and revisit. There's a number of classics that I revisit from time to time. This was like a true cult film. I mean, one of the first real big time cult films. I did not see this movie for a long time.
Same here.
It got limited showings on the monster movie circuit. It got shown more on the West Coast. Guys like Zachary and Vampire and stuff like that. I learned of this film watching it was an old documentary on John Zachary and his shows. I'm trying to think, was it called Horrible Horror? It was a classic VHS that a lot of us owned. And it's out there now. You can find it streaming out there. It brought back some good memories. And I see this clip from this movie going, God, what is that? That's a weird looking movie. I definitely want to check it out. And it took me, this was pre-internet. This was in the days where dinosaurs ruled the earth and we watched TV by candlelight and things like that, as I like to say. So it took me a while, some film books to track it down. I said, that must be Carnival of Souls, about the zombie stuff. And finally, I saw this film in high school. Finally, it was at some kind of special event where they were showing it, in a little auditorium, and I was in love with this film right from the very beginning. I said, "Yeah, this is my kind of movie." It's so weird.
Well, my introduction to this movie was actually in film school.
I could see that.
One of the books that we read happened to have lots of pictures, and we discussed it without having actually seen it. And one of the things that I did was, and this is the funny thing is, I went to Georgia State University.
Yeah.
And there is a video store downtown called Movies Worth Seeing. It is still there. Probably one of the last remaining video stores.
I remember it. I didn't realize it was still there. Wow.
Yeah, it's still there.
I did not know that. Yeah.
And I rented, that was one of the first movies I rented from there when I was in college. And I was like, it was everything I had ever dreamed of. It was different. It was
absolutely
predictable. And after you've watched it, it makes you think about what you just saw and question everything. And
absolutely.
Why I keep going back and revisiting it time and time again.
This is a movie, even though you know the ending. And by the way, I'm sure Kevin is going to say this. Or if you've not seen this movie, we're going to spoil everything.
Well, yeah,
we cannot talk about this movie without spoiling it. But even if you know the ending, it's a great watch. It really,
yeah. and I knew the ending going in before because we had read.
Oh, did you? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'd read about it and we discussed it in the film class. And of course, I probably lied and said I saw the movie, and I was just going along with all the other students in class.
Yeah, I was lucky that it had never been spoiled for me. So by the time I actually got to see it, it was a treat because I had to sort of guess. I figured it out. You know, I said, boy, if I was making this movie, you know, I vividly remember the first time I saw it, saying, if I'm making this movie, how am I going to end this movie? And it was like, yep, okay, he did exactly what I would have done too, and I loved that. But it was, and it was also when I saw that it was based on occurrence at Owl Creek by Ambrose Bierce, loosely on that short story. I was all in because that was one of my favorite episodes of The Twilight Zone. And so, you know, I knew this was going to be a movie that I really, really loved. So that may have spoiled it a little bit, given me a little bit of a hint of what was to come on this movie.
Well, one of the bad things about the movie, and one of the great things is it's a one time, first time, only time film from director Herc Harvey.
That's it. Yeah.
I always have to write it down because I never remember his first name.
I never can remember the Herc part. I remember the Harvey part. I says, Harvey the first name or the last? Yeah.
It's because this is the only
feature film he's done. He just did documentaries and educational films, things like that.
But this film is so visually arresting and stunning. It defies your convention of the type of film that it should be. Now, of course, to tell everyone out there who may have never seen this film, it essentially happens that a young lady by the name of Mary gets into, her and her girlfriends get into a road race with another car full of men, which is so funny because I never noticed that until I rewatched it. I just didn't realize it was girls versus boys in the road.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
It's like, that just seems kind of odd to begin with. And then of course the girls are driven to fall off the bridge.
Right.
And then of course the only survivor is Mary, but she's not exactly the same as she was before. Or
no, not at
all. She quickly leaves town for a new job as an organist in a church. And she's not religious. It is just a job to her.
Yeah.
But she finds herself fascinated by this abandoned, I guess the last thing it was a carnival, but it's been many.
It was a big pavilion. Yeah, it was an actual pavilion in Salt Lake City. Yeah.
She feels drawn to this pavilion while the rest of the world around her goes about its business. She's completely detached. Even so much, though, that the only person who wants to be connected to her is another male.
I love this guy.
who really wants to get in her pants, but she's like,
I was going to say the biggest lech I've ever seen in a movie. Yeah, this guy is,
but she's so detached.
Not even subtle at all.
Yeah, she's so detached that it never works out, even when she tries, because of the way she is. And of course, at this pavilion, which was a carnival at one time, are these carnival-esque figures, and one of them is the male carnivalesque figure that she sees repeatedly through the film, whether it be in dreams or nightmares or just simply as a vision.
Yeah, we don't know really.
I mean, know. But it haunts her enough that she actually goes out to the pavilion to figure out why she's being drawn there. Now, of course, lots of other things happen, at which point there's some great reveals.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Some really good reveals.
There's some great reveals and some visuals based on the pavilion and the people there, or the however you want to call them, people. They are there.
They're zombies. I mean, they have a zombie. I mean, this is the first time we've seen something like. I mean, these are the kind of zombies that affected George Romero. I mean, he was very influenced by this film, and when he would, 7 years later make,
9/11 Dead.
Thank you. God, I worked all last night, and I've been up all day. So I said the mind all of a sudden said, "No, you're not going to remember this right now."
Well, the thing is, they're supposed to be ghosts ghostly figures of some
Yes,
type. They
yeah,
look
they're
like
right. Some kind of
zombies.
specters or something.
Specters, that's a great word for it, but they
Yeah,
look like zombies. The way they
right.
protrude from the water. I wouldn't be surprised if George Romero thought about that when he did a very similar sequence
Oh,
in
I'm sure he
Living
did.
Dead.
Yeah,
When
yeah,
they just pop out of the water. I mean, there's some visually arresting sequences in this.
yeah. The whole feel of this movie, you could tell. I mean, and I saw this many years after I saw Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, same here.
And then I could see, yeah, boy, I could see how he was definitely influenced by this film.
Yeah,
By the look and the feel of it. The handheld stuff, which was
Yeah.
really unheard of back in 1962. I mean, even some of the low budget films we've talked about from the 50s and stuff, they didn't do that.
No, you start seeing that in the later 60s.
Right. And I can't think of the name of the camera now, and I should know that. One of the first of the handheld cameras, this is before we have a Steadicam type mechanism that would come much, much later. Mm-hmm. But so it's a little herky jerky, but not, no pun intended with the director's name, but it's pretty good. And it gives you that sort of almost a documentary type feel.
Well, Harvey did do documentaries.
And that's what he did. Yeah, that's where he got the camera from. He borrowed it from his company.
That same aesthetic is here in this film. So
yeah. But it really adds a nice, weird quality to this film that sort of keeps you. The first time you see this film, you're sort of on edge. It's just something's not quite right, throughout the whole movie. It really gives you that odd feeling. I never have forgotten that from the first time I actually sat down and watched this.
Well, it's a lot of the camera angles that he used.
Yes, yeah.
Especially the organ music that plays.
Oh, that really enhances things. Yeah.
I actually love the score for this, and I have it on LP.
Yeah.
Amazing score.
It is, yeah.
And so it just adds so much ambiance to the.
Well, in the wild part, I didn't know this for the longest time until I really started reading about this film after I'd seen it for a time. That Herc's the organist, or the guy that did the music score, was a friend of his, and had done some work for him before, and that influenced the fact that Mary is an organist in this film. That would have been written a little differently, but Herc loved the sound of an organ, and so he says, "Yeah, this would be perfect." And he made her an organist as part of the plot device.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when you add in the fact that the new church that she's works at, and when she's really dissociated with it, the priest notices the devil music that she's playing.
Oh, I know. When she lapses into some really great stuff.
We can't have that playing in this.
Not here. The blasphemy. It's like
blasphemy. I was like, really? Wow.
Yeah, that's the first thing I said. I said, really? I thought it was pretty cool music, actually.
It leads to her being fired, and that sets off a chain reaction to everything else that follows after that.
That's now when everything goes.
Nothing to ground her to that place she's at.
Yeah. Talk about a character study movie. I mean, this film is so engaging from the time that all of these first responders to the car wreck show up, and all of a sudden off in the corner, she's climbing up this sandbar or whatever, and they go, "Hey, I think there's a person over there."
And this is after they've been looking for a long time.
Yeah, they've been looking for a couple of days. I think it was 2 days.
They say they're never going to find anybody. This car has been dredged downstream somewhere else.
Right.
But she finds her way up on the sandbar. It's actually a good word, even though may not be.
That's what it sort of reminded me of.
Yeah, no, that's a great way. I didn't know what to call it either.
Yeah, I grew up on a lake, not on a river, so yeah, I don't know the river terms too well.
But she stumbles out of it, and then she just doesn't need help at first, and then she from there, she just kind of does her own thing. And simply, she does that throughout the whole film. Like, she's a very independent woman, and you kind of wonder why she was in the car with these other girls to begin with, but.
It does seem very strange for her, the way that she's presented. That why would she have done that? She should have known better.
When I rewatched the film, it seems even odder that these ladies would even be racing against another car with.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
That's the first time where I really noticed that there was all men in one car and all women in one car.
Yeah.
And of course, the men lie about what exactly happened.
Oh, of course.
They said, "Yeah, we just saw this car drive go off."
Lost control and went over the bridge. Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you're kind of the reason why I went over the bridge. What if they had to survive? Then
I got a kick out of the fact that this film was shot for $30,000, basically $30 to $33,000. That Herc had like 17,000 in the bank when he decided to go into production, and was able to raise the rest of it through people giving him $500 investment or whatever like that. And one of the biggest expenses that he had was he had to repair the bridge where they shot the accident, because they knocked like one of the rails off or something like that. And he had to replace.
Oh, Jesus.
And I think the second most expensive thing was paying her. The gal that played Mary they paid her $2,000 to do the role. So
well, she's in like almost every scene.
It's amazing. And then they shot most of it in Kansas. That's where, so a lot of the people that are in this movie you've never heard of. That's why we're not really talking about the cast, because it's like only one of them actually ever went on and did anything else.
Yeah.
She was from New York, and Herc had met her in New York and said, "Come on, I'll do this movie." And she had a choice between another one and picked this one. But all the rest of them were like community theater actors and things like that. If you look up their resumes, that's it. They're known for this movie. And that's it. And they do a great job. I mean, the acting of this is pretty good.
Yeah. Keep in mind that other than the priest, there's no one who has a whole lot of lines in it. And
he's the only one that went on to have a career.
Oh, geez.
I mean, not a huge career, but I mean, he actually was in other stuff.
Yeah, he has a lot of scenes and he has a lot of things. But they're not. I mean, she's more or less in every scene. But this is why I want to bring this up, because before we get to the end and the big reveal,
sure,
there are scenes in the movie that do not involve her.
That's true.
Which is what leads to this being such an interesting film for rewatch. So if you've never seen Carnival of Souls, some of the stuff we're going to talk about may delve into the big reveal at the end. I'm sorry, but we got to talk about it anyways, because that's what this movie is all about. But by the time you get to the very end, and Mary has had her experience at the pavilion where she's chased around by the specters, because I love that word. Even though they look like zombies, they're like
no, that's what they are. Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. They look like zombies, and they come out of the water like they're like zombies, and but the specters is such a great word for that.
Yeah.
It is slowly revealed that when police come back to the carnival or the pavilion, they see her car and they see footprints, but then they don't see where the footprints lead. They just disappear.
They just disappeared. Like she was like the rapture hit or something and just took her up. Yeah.
And then you cut to all the way back again, backwards in time almost, but they don't actually tell you that, to when they pull the car out. Now,
right, when they finally find the car.
When they finally find the car and her body is in the car.
Yeah.
Which means that she never left the car and she drowned with all the other girls. But the kicker is, when you're watching the film and they have scenes without her in it, you realize that all these people who are real have been interacting with a ghost or a specter
or something. Yeah.
And that's where you start thinking about the movie after you've seen the movie. And that's one of the joys of watching this, because it leaves you thinking about it.
Absolutely.
How does she interact with these real people? How do real people look at it? And that's one of the great things about this film, is because for me, it's like, whoa, it's not like the whole movie was just a dream and she was in purgatory or some shit like that.
No, that's right.
Which is a kind of a cliche and trope in a lot of movies, where it's all revealed at the very end. It's all a dream and stuff. This one is not, because real people were affected by this.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. There's definitely interactions. Especially the physical evidence that they find at the end at this pavilion, which also influenced the movie, because it was just something Herc Harvey had seen when he was in Salt Lake City. He says, "I love this building." he gets a friend of his who's a screenwriter and says, "Okay, I want this pavilion. I want these people to be like specters or whatever, and we got to shoot it in about 2 weeks. So let's see what you can come up with." And it's a great story.
It is. It is.
I mean, I love the interaction because I mean, it even involved after Mary is supposedly found or whatever. She keeps being drawn. She's drawn back to the bridge a couple of times before she leaves town to go on this gig playing organ at this church. Yeah, I mean it seems like Harvey is telling this story from her vantage point until you see the very end of the movie, and then you're like, wait a minute. Was it her vantage point or was it something else going? I mean, that's the part that always gets me on this film.
And I think
because you really don't know.
You don't know, and it's open-ended, and it's left up to your own interpretation as an audience member. It reminds me of the movie Jacob's Ladder, where you're watching it. And
yes, that's a good. Yeah, absolutely.
What's real? What's not? Is he? I mean, there's just certain things that you believe that Jacob Singer was interacting with the real world, yet he's supposed to not be alive. Yet, it's those type of things that have you rewatching these movies.
Well, I got to confess, and I'm only saying this because you've read the script. This influenced a script I read that I've been trying to get produced, and it now you can see the influence this film had on me personally in the script that I wrote called Dreams. Which is not a giveaway of the hook. You'll never guess the hook. So, but I don't know if I'll ever get it made. So, oh well.
We're gonna get it made, Jim. I'm still working with Howard on trying to do a 3-film.
I know,
for this year. So we're working on that this year. After, of course, Foot.
There's been crazy stuff going on. Yeah,
too much crazy stuff.
I had the knee thing last year, which took about 8 months of my life. So even though I still worked and stuff, it's just but a lot of the things I wanted to do, I couldn't. I was doing the rehab and all that fun stuff. So, but you've got much more serious rehab than I had on that. So
it's not going to stop us. We're going to keep going and keep.
Oh no, we'll keep doing it.
Yeah. So
now you can direct from a wheelchair, right?
Of course. Oh Jesus!
And then when all is said and done, they'll say somebody was shooting a movie here. Where did they go? And then we'll have a movie within itself there.
So we discussed something before starting this conversation that I want to get your opinions on. Sure. And that is the fact that you watched the colorized version of this.
Yes,
this movie is originally in black and white.
Wow, did that surprise me? When we talked about we were going to be doing this film. And I said, "Oh yeah, I want to do this film. Absolutely, I want to do this film with you." I have several DVD copies of this film because, unfortunately, when Herc did a public premiere for this movie, he screwed up his copyright, and so the minute I learned something about this. So if you're making movies, folks, pay attention. The minute. Apparently, he showed this in the theater. It was in Lawrence, Kansas. It lost its copyright and went into the public domain immediately, and people were jumping on this film like within days of mass producing it or whatever. So there's a lot of copies of this movie out on these compilations and things like that. And as I've said many times to folks, you got to really watch the quality of these films because you never know where it's coming from. Now they had eventually got the copyright back in order, but the damage had already been done. I mean, so I own probably 3 copies of this in black and white, and a couple of them very questionable quality. It probably looked like they might have been dubbed off of a VHS. And I had a VHS copy of this too, which was really not great quality. What's out there is Blu-ray quality right now. There's a 4K Blu-ray restoration to this. So I thought, okay, let's watch that. I stream just about everything. And I found one and it was in color, and I get like 30 seconds into the movie and I go, oh, I don't want to see this in color. That's going to ruin the whole damn thing. I didn't realize they'd colorized this movie. And every streaming service that I checked had this movie in color. So I was like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to sit down and watch the color because I didn't want to watch any of the crappy ones that I had. So, and I got to admit, it was actually pretty good.
I'll have to watch.
This is one of the rare times where it was like, okay, I was just as engaged, and a lot of the atmosphere still came through, even with the colorized version, which really stunned me because usually that's the thing that will kill a movie like that. Because the black and white I thought, enhanced this movie so well. But it's an interesting looking color, and they did a nice job with it. Where some of these colorized films, they won't completely colorize them. You'll get into the background, and it sort of fades into a black and white background. If it's done poorly, this one was done extremely well.
Okay.
And it was like, so if you didn't know any better, and because 62, there were a lot of color movies out in 62, you might think, oh, that's the way they made it. Okay, so I got to admit, it was, I'm not a real big fan of colorizing classic black and white films, but yeah, this one was intriguing.
So many of them have been done in this day and age because so many modern audiences look down upon the black
that's right.
films.
We've had many people on my podcast who said, why don't you do more of the color films? Because we don't like black and white movies. It's like, man, you're missing out. Yep. You are missing out on some terrific films.
Yep.
That means you don't like The Elephant Man, or you don't like Schindler's List, or, contemporary films that have gone black and white for artistic reasons. It's like, you don't know what,
No.
You're denying yourself some amazing films if you do that.
So, regarding Carnival of Souls, are there any other things you want to talk about for this film? Because we've gone over a lot of stuff about the film.
Well, I think I didn't realize how much significance the name of the movie had.
Okay.
Until the end of the movie, that it was a Carnival of Souls. I just kept thinking, they're talking about the pavilion. They're talking about these specters, at this big ball dance that she keeps seeing, and some of that. But it really does. It does encompass the entire film. Mm-hmm. Now, when you really realize, whose perspective are we looking at here? One of my favorite scenes in the movie, I should mention this, is she thinks she's cracking up. She bumps into this guy on the streets of the city that she's living in, where she got the job as an organist. And it just turns out he's a psychiatrist or psychologist, one or the other. He's a shrink. And he says, you seem upset, and why don't you come see me? And she starts consulting with him. And during one of them, it's one of my favorite reveals, is where she's going on and on and on about the crazy things they're going through. And she doesn't know what to believe anymore, because she's in these situations where sometimes people see her, sometimes they don't, and all that. And all of a sudden, he slowly turns around in his chair, and he's one of the specters. That's the scene that I saw in the Horrible Horror documentary. And I thought, I got to see this movie. This is pretty cool. I want to see what this movie's all about. And it was fun because Zachary was sort of making fun of it, because the guy just had this big dopey grin on his face when he comes around. But when you see it in the context of the movie, it's a hell of a scene. It's a really, really well done scene. And there's so many of those kind of scenes throughout this film.
Well, you bring up a good thing, that the scenes where she's running around the city because she's coming across people who can't see her. Right. It's they see her, they see her at one moment, and then all of a sudden she becomes a nothing, a blank, someone they can't see. And
I think like in the dress shop, that's very powerful.
It is, and those scenes alone, like the ones at the pavilion, are ones that leave you when you're leaving the film with questions. Yeah, and I think films that do that for the audience are very powerful films. They make you want to go back and rewatch them. Not
absolutely, yeah,
once but twice. Or for me, I've seen this movie a lot of times, and I enjoy it every time I see it. There's not a lot of films out there that do that for me.
Me either. I agree with you on that.
Jacob Flatter actually happens to be another one that's like that.
Yes. Yeah. I've got to go back. You're making me want to go back and watch it. I haven't seen that one in a while. You're absolutely right. They're very, very similar.
The funny story about that one is, unlike this film, I saw Jacob's Ladder at the theater and hated it because I didn't get it.
Yeah.
When I rewatched it, and my mind was blown. And so that, like this one now, is a film I go back to a lot. I've seen.
I was the same way. I saw it on VHS when it got. I didn't see it in the theater, but I saw it when it came out. I happened to see it in the video store and thought, yeah, it looks sort of interesting. It had some people in it I liked. Didn't really care for it the first time, and then thought, oh, let's give it another shot. Then it sunk in and went, wait a minute, I see what they're doing here. And it was one of those, and I love experiences like that. Yeah,
one of those films, and it stays with you.
It does. Yeah, the visual imagery of that is just incredible.
Just stays with you, and like that film. If you, for everyone out there who's listening, if you haven't seen Carnival of Souls or Jacob's Ladder, these are two amazing films that you should definitely watch if you want a film that will leave you questioning what you saw.
Yes, very much so.
So, any other words or questions about Carnival of Souls?
Ooh, I'm trying to think some of the others. We've covered a lot of ground in a short period of time.
That's why I like talking with you. We always cover a lot of great ground in some of these movies we talk
about. We do, yeah. This one is just chock full of it. I mean, it's like there's really there may be some people that say, "Oh, it's slow," or so. This one is not.
I don't think this.
Once they dive into it, and no pun intended, but once that car hits the water, man, you're in for a roller coaster ride, and that's what it feels like. You just don't really know what to think of this thing, but you can't stop watching it.
Yeah.
And that's kudos to Herc Harvey. And I wish he'd gone on to make some more feature films. Yeah. I'm not sure why that was, if it was like people thought maybe, the people in the industry thought this was too weird. I know he had trouble finding distributors for it and things of that. A lot of this he had to do himself. And it took a while for it to develop. It developed a cult following, within 20 years of it being released. But he's dead by then, and that's the shame of it, because I would have loved to have seen some of the other ideas that he had to put on film.
Yeah.
This is an incredible. This is. I'm not going to put it up there with, like Orson Welles' first films or whatever, but it is a game changer when it. For films of that time period, he just did a lot of things that just weren't done in feature films, and opened the door for guys like George Romero and others who pushed the envelope even further, going into the 70s.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good word to say. Push the envelope.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so what we're doing now on the show is we're going to be rating the movies. I think this is the first time you will be doing this.
This is a first, yeah.
Yeah, so what we do is we do a ratings from 1 star to 5 stars, 1 star being poor, brain dead film that we will never go watch again, and 5 being Oscar-worthy film. Where on that pantheon do you place Carnival of Souls?
I'm putting it at a very solid 4.
Okay. So I'm going to do the same thing because I really, really enjoyed this film. But like you said, I don't think it's the same. It's not the same level as me with like Night of the Living Dead or like Rosemary's Baby, which I believe are 5s. But this film is definitely a high 4.
Right. And I'm the kind of guy, I rarely give 5s out. It has to be really something spectacular, almost perfect. And this one, and I'm not, not criticizing the film, but it's like, man, it's damn good for a $30,000 production. I am hard pressed to find anything that is as good for what he had to work with.
Yeah,
it's amazing what he did. So he, the tricks he had to do and things like that. I mean, he just couldn't do some of the stuff some of these big budget films could do.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of big budget films like Corman films and stuff that, spent twice as much or 3 times as much that weren't even close to what this one did. So, and this was being studied in film schools. I mean, that's quite a mark as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
That people finally recognize just how changing this film was, and, how it affected future filmmakers and how we look at movies.
Well, that's how I came across it. Was in film school. So
Yeah, yeah.
all right. So with that, I want to thank you, Jim, for joining us for Conversation in Horror. If you out there, if you were listening to this podcast and you enjoyed this conversation on this classic movie, make sure to go check out the classic movie itself, but also go check out some of our previous episodes because we've done, well, we tried to do a lot of great films and cover a lot of films to enhance your enjoyment of the genre and to give you an education on some of the films from many different decades and many different subgenres. So don't forget, you can catch new episodes of the show every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on your favorite podcast app, Spotify, and YouTube. And make sure to check us out on all your social media places. With that, I want to thank you from everyone at Something Wicked Entertainment for joining us today, and have a pleasant day. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, written, produced, and directed by Kevin L. Powers, executive producer Kelly A. Inoka. All contents and material from this episode of Conversations in Horror is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures.